Hey, what's up, family? What's up, family? What's up, family? I'm coming to you on a different day than my usual podcast broadcast because there's an important conversation that we need to have tonight. And I think it's important to have these conversations when they come up um, because, we got to be relevant and we got to deal with these issues as they arise and as people are talking about them. So I will say this again toward the end, but I do still plan on going, having the broadcast tomorrow as well, Tuesday at 8 o'clock p.m. Central, where I will be doing a response video to someone who responded to kind of the second part of my last broadcast, to someone who responded to my Hardly Initiated podcast. And so that'll be tomorrow night at 8 o'clock p.m. But tonight, obviously, unless you've been hiding under a rock today, in the Black church particularly, there's been a lot of conversation about this public shaming that took place yesterday at a church service. And I think that it's interesting the different ways that people are responding and reacting. I think it's very good that the conversations are being had. But I'll be honest and say that I'm challenged in a number of ways and on a number of sides with some of the things that I have been hearing. And so I thought, why not hop on and just kind of have a candid conversation about it, because these are real issues affecting real people. So there was this church in Virginia, True Vine Apostolic Church of Christ, that is in Hampton, Virginia. And in that church, the pastor, I think is it a bishop or just pastor? Anyway, Terry Jackson. I don't know everything about this particular church. I don't know anything about it, actually. But during their worship service, he had a woman come up to the front, a young woman who's pregnant out of wedlock, and come up to the front to apologize for her out of wedlock pregnancy. Now, there have been a lot of conversations about the nature of that. What it signifies for the church. And one of the big things that I was tripping off of, if you will, is just like some of the people were responding like it's the first time they've ever heard of this. And I'm like, this has been happening for generations. I was raised Pentecostal and it happened in, my church. So, well, the bishop's daughter didn't have to, but everybody else did. But I was like, so this is not new, but everybody's not churched. Everybody wasn't raised in certain environments in church. And so for some people, it may be new. And so I thought that it was important to hop on and have this conversation. So I am going to be inviting on, as my conversation partner this evening, my husband, Elder Damion Parks-Weekly, who's going to just come on and just share, some his perspective and thoughts on this issue, because the reality is people have been experiencing this. Like I said, in my church, it happened when I was growing up. But in conversation with Damion, he didn't experience that for a while. So Damion, tell us about your experience with seeing this as you were growing up, or lack of experience with seeing it.
Right. So good evening to everyone tuning in, and hoping that you all are having a great evening. For those of us who are kind of in the Midwest, I hope that you all are braving or not having too much cabin fever, as we are all indoors, mostly locked in from the snow and ice and what have you. So pray our deliverance from that in a minute, because I know some of us need to get out. But I also wanted to say that I was sharing with Overseer earlier, like, this is not everyone's experience. It's not everyone's Black church experience either. In that I grew up in the Baptist church, but that never happened during my time. I heard other friends say what was going on in their churches, but I never experienced that. I really thought in the very beginning that it was a joke, or that they were just lying to me, that this was until my best friend in high school. She was pregnant our last year. And and the school didn't even didn't take her out. Her family did. She belongs to a ministry family. And some of you who watch it may know who I'm talking about, but I won't use a name. Not my place, but I have to use an example because that was my first real interaction with understanding it. And when she explained to me, that she had to apologize for it, I didn't understand the apology part. If she felt like she needed to apologize to God for sinning, then okay.
About how old were y'all at this time?
we're in high school. We're our senior year of high school. So what is that? 16, 17?
17, 18, yeah.
And I was just I couldn't wrap my head around that. Like I really just did not get it. I didn't get it. I really didn't get that. So it was a hard pill for me to swallow. She didn't like officially. She graduated, but she had to do school from at home at that point, and she didn't get to walk the stage with us and any of those things. I really missed her from that, but the whole thing of the fact and then we all knew who the baby's father was. They did eventually end up getting married and what have you, but I really think that had to happen under the pressure of the church. But I don't know that, but I can't say they're no longer together, but but I felt like that was the pressure of the church. I also felt like where was he? He was like in that situation, he was nowhere to be found. Like nobody asked him. And I felt like this young lady from this True Vine Church in Virginia, where's the dude? Where is old boy? Where is baby daddy? Where is the other half of this life that is forming? And I'm, women just okay, I have so much to say, but I'm gonna let you.
There is a lot to say about it, isn't it? And it's like, how do I even formulate this in a way that I'm really telling a good narrative rather than just like getting all of this out because there's so much in me to say about it. Because that what you brought up, where's the guy, that really does highlight the misogyny that we see in the church. And we did an episode a few weeks ago about misogyny in the church. And I think that it's important for us to realize that we do not treat women the same way that we treat men in the church. Men are generally not going to put up with that. They'll tell you to go to hell. But women have been conditioned to accept discipline and to accept all kinds of mistreatment at the church and from the church because she's been perceived as less than for so long. And so, yeah, I think that we have to have honest conversations about the misogyny that we see, the fact that that part of this judgment against the woman is because, it's not even about the sin for some people. That's one of the reasons why maybe the man is not there. Part of it is misogyny. Part of it is that I don't even care that y'all had sex. I just care that I see it. Mm-hmm. And the sight part is that the woman is carrying the baby so we can see her baby bump, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, I don't even care about what you're doing and don't do. I just don't want to be accosted. It's like how when LGBT people are simply living their lives in the open and people feel like, well, you just throwing up your sexuality in my face. No, I'm kind of just existing. And
I'm out here having dinner. I'm out here shopping.
I'm just existing, and I'm no longer hiding myself. But you feel like I'm accosting you with my sexuality. I'm really not. And I think that it's the same thing. We see women and we see that baby bump and we feel accosted by her sin. We need to have a whole conversation, not tonight, about what sin really is. But anyway, but feeling accosted by it because we can see it. So I think that there's this hypocrisy associated with not, am I really concerned about your soul? Because if I'm really concerned about your soul, both of y'all will be up here. And it ain't even about being concerned. It's about, because that's a whole other story. But like you said, wanting to say so much at one time. But if that was really my concern and this was the route that I wanted to take, then both of y'all would be up here, not just the woman. But really it's about, I don't care about women, first of all. And number two, I see the evidence of your crime in your baby bump. And so you need to come up here and apologize to everybody. But the other part of this, and this is what frustrated me, is okay, fine. Where was the man? Okay, cool. That's a good question. But a better question isn't where is the man? The better question is, why is anybody up here? Because the truth is, man, woman, anybody else, you don't owe any damn body an apology for anything that you have done that may be perceived to be, understood to be a sin. If I commit a sin, I don't owe anybody an apology for that unless somebody was directly affected by what it was that I did. Did I harm them in my doing of it? If I slapped you, then yeah, I owe you an apology. But the church, I owe my apology to God about what things I have done that I believe I was wrong about. But the church, if anything, the church should be the one apologizing to people for the harm it has caused to people, because less than people causing the church harm, it's been the church causing people harm. But we don't see them apologizing to anybody for the things that they have done. And so, yeah, I just it rubbed me wrong on a number of levels. One of the other levels, and I don't want to monopolize the conversation. One of the other levels was I see a lot of people who are also justifying the action. It's not so much justifying, but minimizing. That's a better word, because they acknowledge that it was wrong, but they're like, but I mean, hey, if you were raised in this kind of environment, then it's nothing new. That doesn't make it okay. So your mama been getting slapped by your daddy ever since you were born, and you 16 years old. And so, well, I don't know why she's tripping off of it now. You've been being slapped 16 years. Really though? That makes it all right? And so, yeah, I don't think that if anything, it shows that how long it's been happening has desensitized us to how harmful it is and how toxic it is and how traumatic it is. And we need to do some self-reflection to ask ourselves, why is this not affecting me the way that it should be? Because I have been seeing it so long and ignoring it so long and tolerating it so long, it no longer even bothers me. How does that relate to some of the other forms of church hurt that you are witnessing and observing and turning a blind eye to because you've been desensitized to it?
And I think that's the bigger part, is that a lot of people have been desensitized. If you grew up apostolic Pentecostal, and then in some Baptist churches I know of, that it has happened before. I we were also desensitized to slavery at one point, or desensitized to women being property. And honestly, this looks like property to me, because we clearly, like, patriarchy and misogyny, the meter is going off. Like, it's not even a red flag anymore. It's an alarm, it's an alert, it's red, it's right here. And so the outrage truly comes from a lot of people who either grew up in those denominations that do this. They either grew up and realized and came to their own understanding that this was not right and okay. And then there are some people this is brand new to. They've never heard of it before. This is their first time viewing it. So yeah, they're a little outraged, about it. And I am glad that the outrage is here. So, because granted, guess what? The sad part of this is this happened somewhere else in the country the same day that it happened to that young lady. It just was not, it didn't go viral. It just wasn't put out there like this. And so many things are being exposed about the church. People keep screaming about the church is the devil is coming after the church. No, the church is finally getting what it's supposed to get. So its days of reckoning are here, because the church is not without blame and not without blemish. Simply because there are so many things, and especially things towards women. We won't even get on the other parts of the spectrum, but just towards women, period. Like, so how far back do you want to go in biblical days? Do you want to be owned as property? Do you want to be connected to a man who has 5 other wives and 6 concubines, and it was okay during that time? Like, how, so to try to skirt over it, justify it. And even if this is one of the things that I say to a lot of people, because I realize it in my own family on both sides, just because Nana and them, Mima, grandma, granny, whatever, big mom and them, just because that's what they did and that's how they grew up, did not make it right and okay. They did not do everything right. They messed up a lot. Just like our parents' generations messed up, we're making mistakes as well. But the thing of it is for us to learn from the generations before. We're not going to do that this way. And there is nothing biblical about this young lady having to stand up in the church and apologize to the church. The church is not the one who's going to be up at night changing this baby's diapers or taking on the full responsibility of the raising of the child. And then for him to stand up there and deny them having a baby shower. Now, mind you, I'm not glorifying the premarital sex, because we don't even know if this is somebody that she was in a relationship or not. So I'm not glorifying that. But the child is not the one at fault, and the child is going to need to be one to be taken care of. So I do hate that there are moments where it looks like that they're not accepting the outpour of people that are really trying to cash out her money, send stuff for the baby, and they're denying those things. But that's what someone said this before, like, that's what makes it looks like it's a cult, because who wouldn't want the support? Why wouldn't you want her to have the support? The church is only going to be good to do so much. So why would the support? So that's
because I hate her. They say love the sin and hate the sin. I hate her sin more than I love her.
Mm-hmm.
And really,
which
it's
means
not
you
even,
really don't love her
honestly,
at all.
you don't really love her. And it's really not even about hating her sin. You just love yourself and your own
Yeah.
self-righteousness, because it always makes you feel good to have somebody else that you can beat up on. This is just
Yeah.
the schoolhouse bully behind the pulpit. This is just the schoolhouse bully version of doing church and having church. I want to put up, while I'm talking, a link that if anybody wants to actually come on and have this conversation with us, I believe very strongly in having conversation. And so if you have some thoughts that you would like to share, then you certainly feel free to go to that link, talk.faitevolution.show, talk.faitevolution.show, because we do want to hear from you. But I'll just say, on the point you mentioned earlier, I lift up my baby while I'm talking so we can say hi to Cameron. Hey. So, but on the point of this, you brought up this thing about outrage. Can I just talk for just a second about outrage?
Sure.
And this is why I get in trouble. See, I get in trouble from people on all sides, because I believe in holding everybody accountable for doing better, starting with myself, right? But this idea of everybody being outraged, I want the right people to be outraged. And what do I mean by that? How are you outraged by this young woman being shamed in the church, but your church does it too? They just didn't do it that Sunday. Or how are you outraged by them shaming this woman, but your church every third Sunday, the pastor is saying something behind the pulpit that's shaming the LGBTQ plus people? Or what about if you go to a church that believes in demonic oppression and divine healing, stuff like that, which the sanctuary believes, right? But the way they believe it, the way they practice it, is that if somebody is disabled, they believe that if somebody has ADD or ADHD, or somebody has a bipolar, that they think that they're possessed by a demon and they're trying to exorcise the demon from the person. We've seen that was years ago, a child actually died in church by having that type of thing taking place. And I think the child was autistic. And so you go to a church that doesn't understand mental health and doesn't understand health, and so it's treating these things in that way. But you're so outraged here. And so I'm like, to me, check yourself first. Am I actually building up the houses, the churches that are doing this in a different direction? Perhaps it's not toward women, but it's towards somebody else. And so I'm like, use all that outrage, use all that energy, and direct it at your own church that you haven't criticized, even though they shame people week after week. And so it bothers me that we have our picks and chooses of who deserves respect, of who deserves honor, but we don't mind them just absolutely destroying the lives of LGBTQ plus people, or whoever else you might say. It bothers me that we're so self-righteous and holy on this issue, but we don't apply that same principle. I'm not asking you to have special favorites or anything, but just apply the same standard. Everybody deserves respect. Everybody deserves love. But our church thinks that being gay is a sin. Okay, you also thought that premarital sex was a sin. So It doesn't change the fact that the outrage that you have over here should be over here too. Right. Because according to you, both of them are sin, right? And so that you can't back up out of it. You can't wiggle out of it by talking about how you think that homosexuality is a sin. Because even in this situation, they think it's a sin to have premarital sex. And so, yeah, I'm tired of hypocrisy in the church.
And I think that's the thing. Go ahead. The thing that bothers me is I really don't have a problem with, and this I said this, and I was supposed to go into this year not really commenting on other people's things, even when I had something to say, but I couldn't help this.
That's the prophetic ministry. You have to comment.
I know. Oh gosh. Okay. I really don't have a problem with, like, and I'm not one of those people that's out here that's trying to change people's beliefs. Like, to me, and also a lot of times, like, preaching from the pulpit doesn't help people change a belief. These are things that you have to have someone in person in a personal connection with to help understand why your belief is triggering, traumatic, wrong in today's society, misled, misguided, toxic. Church hurt. It takes more than just preaching a sermon from that, from the pulpit. But my thing of, nobody's trying to change the fact that the women had on skirts at this particular church. Since that's what we're talking about. The women had on skirts. Most of the time, they all had on a dolly or something on their heads. The women were sitting on one side and the men were sitting on the other. Like the whole thing just screamed misogyny and patriarchy. And so just the environment, like just existing in the environment, was toxic. You're not going to tell me it's not toxic. It may be what you're used to, but just that defined line was absolutely toxic. So then that leads me to believe that there's nothing like, it's one of those things where, okay, the women can't walk across a pulpit. They can't wear pants. Like, are we really still here? Like, and ladies, I've got to say this. If it were not for you all, no church in the land
Tell the truth, shame the devil.
Y'all have a power, like I'm gonna be a little bit candid for a second. In most of the world, y'all talk about how women are women, and you got something that's powerful. Well, okay, I don't know about that. Don't really care, but but the one thing that I know in churchdom, churches cannot exist without women. You all make up usually 70 to 80% of the congregation. So you talk about the purse strings. I mean, it's not just a money thing, but just your existence in there. And then you hold little to no power in that. Why would you keep subjecting to yourself that minimizes you and places you as a third, fourth, and fifth class citizen? And, don't keep going back to me with the scripture about he that findeth a woman findeth a good thing. I think that's a good thing. I also think that a man that findeth a man is a good thing, but that's a whole other topic. We'll talk about that later. But I also, understand that if it's your household's belief and thought process and mechanics that the male in the house is the head of the household, that's not my problem. That's not even the problem. It is how the woman is viewed and respected in that same household. And
I think it should be less than the man is the head and more a matter of he's the head just because my personality is to be submissive, is to, I'm the more passive person. And that's perfectly fine. But it should be on the basis of your personality, not on the basis of your genitalia.
Not because your church told you that that's the way that it should be.
Right.
I don't know if you remember this. We did this conference back in Arizona a couple of years ago. Oh gosh, what's the name of it? We went to Phoenix about 3 years ago. Anyway,
Reformation project.
Reformation. And so one of the things that we talked about was how, in our relationship or in most of our LGBT relationships, that it's not, we try not to take on these. It's not good to try to take on a role, a male or a female role, or a passive or dominant role. How we operate in a household should feed off of personality, what likes and dislikes of said individuals. If you're a more submissive person and your person is a little bit more I don't want to say authoritative, but a little bit more assertive or whatever, then okay, cool. Then that's how it should happen. Not because, again, of genitalia. Not because, because now it's the woman's fault to stand up in the church. And I still say, where is the man? It's 2025. Somebody's going to find him. Social media is going to find out who the father is. And unfortunately, they're going to get them. Now, I'll tell you all the time, people talk about the gay mafia and this mafia and the black mafia and that mafia. The social media mafia is going to find this guy.
But the truth is, he may not even attend that church. So where would he be?
May not. Yeah. He may not, but they're going to find him. And I think it would be for his best to just, you need to have your day in court just like she did. Like
honestly, I don't think so. It's not his fault that they dragged her up to the front.
If he belongs to her church, it is his fault. He had to.
If he belongs to her church, then that's different, right?
Yeah.
But we can't make assumptions. I don't know anything about this girl. I don't know anything about the church. I don't know anything. Girl, I don't know about this young woman. I don't know anything about the church. So there's obviously a lot of assumptions that we're making on our part, but I'm like, I just want to move past the time when anybody's being brought up to the front of the church. Because if I
Absolutely.
get brought up to the front of the church, I'm probably gonna cuss somebody out.
Oh,
See,
I know
you
I
have
am.
to understand that this happened. So I'm gonna pull the veil back and share something. This happened to my mother in the church that I grew up in. Now, she wasn't brought to the front of the church for premarital sex or for being pregnant out of wedlock. It was something else. But the idea of having to come up to the front and apologize to people, and my my mother is like, she kind of, you wonder where I got my attitude from. She kind of, she don't mean no harm sometimes, but when she gets worked up, it's kind of hard for her to hide it. And so when she finished saying what she said, "Now I hope y'all are happy now," and handed the mic back over to the bishop and walked off. But it's like, but just the fact that it happened at all. And of course, nowadays, she's liberated from that whole way of, so it would never happen again. But just being in that environment, and that's all we accept certain treatments because that's all we know. And so people say, well, if she there, then that she chose to be there. She chose to submit to that house. Yeah, but it's kind of like saying, well, if the slave is still a slave, why didn't he run away? So we're not going to condemn slavery because the slave chose not to run away from the master.
Yeah. And in a lot of cases, the people don't, you hate to say it because you don't want them to sound ignorant, but they really don't know any better because this is the culture that they grew up in. And in their minds and in their immediate community, when it's centered around their religion or their spirituality, this is what's done. And so I get it, but that's why people refer to it as a cult. And I used to have an aversion to saying that about churches, but honestly, I don't anymore because they have very much cultish appeal. Like they really do have a lot of cultish things that happen. And this is one of, like I said, so it didn't help. So now the church in question is also in so many days of prayer this week. And so they went live yesterday and today was uh, day 2 of prayer. And I just kind of skimmed through their Facebook page and noticed that most of their comment sections was like 19, 20, maybe up to about 100 comments per service that they broadcast. The last 2 days, today's was over 3,000 comments on their Facebook Live because people were not having it. At first, I was like, "Y'all, this is not okay." Now, but honestly, there was a part of me that was like, it needed to be done. And I know a lot of people will say like, well, and I know there's a lot of quiet supporters out there. There were some people who were making comments. A lot of young women and older women who made comments like, "I grew up this way. I guess I don't really see it." And the word desensitized did come up in some of those conversations. But some of the things that they were saying to the church, and they were pointing out things that I had already noticed in the building, the division of the women with skirts down, the dollies on their heads, and what have you. Um, and so it was just, I don't know. It was just crazy. My heart goes out. I hate that. I hate this for the church. Can you imagine being a member of the church and now your church is under this scrutiny for existing the way that they exist? And I my heart goes out for that. But
Stop letting my baby cry. No, I'm kidding.
I know my heart goes out for that. But at the same time, it shouldn't have it look like, don't, let's not blame this on the devil. So that's what here's what we're not gonna do. We're not gonna blame this one on the devil because it's not. What it should do for me if I were a member is to question, is there some validity to this? Because this is deep, this is serious, this is a lot. And let's maybe I need to reassess this. But the problem is that the majority of the men, let's just face it, the men, the church is driven by the men. They'll get together and there won't be a woman anywhere in the conversation about it to share something, that's a little bit more today sensitive towards women. Like this is before, like, do you even want women to vote? Like, this is still a real old age mentality and what have you, about women existing in church.
It absolutely is. And it's in terms of the public outlash against backlash against the church. You know, I it's interesting because I come up from two different sides, right? Because I am a part of the church at the same time that I am a critic of the church on many ways, and in many ways, and some people think I'm judgmental about the church. I love the church. I just want the church to grow up. Um, but I'm also a part of the church, right? And so I don't want to see a church getting lambasted and getting, getting they butts handed to them. But at the same time, I also know that if we did it to ourselves, right? And so I think that it's okay for us to hold one another accountable. I hate that it happens publicly, but there's no way around that in social media. You chose to live stream your church service where you knew this woman was about to be humiliated. And then so you get to live stream backlash. And my thing is like, deal with it, right? And then also I feel bad because while we're all having conversations about this on an intellectual level, on a theological level, on a whatever philosophical level, right? Let's also remember that these are not just topics and issues. These are people. There's a young woman now who has gone viral. Her personal, sensitive story is now known to the whole world, right? And while we're forming opinions and sharing opinions and going live and sharing the Facebook posts and sharing images and things like that, there's still a woman attached to this who's innocent. She ain't innocent. She has it. I said she's innocent. She's innocent of what's happening to her, right? And so, and then that me mentioned earlier, then there's this guy that's probably gonna get drugged into it, and get drugged, and now he gonna get drugged for something the church did, right? And so we have to remember that there are human beings who are suffering now doubly. They're already suffering before the humiliation itself, but now they're suffering because of the backlash from it and the virality of what's going on. And so it's very difficult. So perhaps by letting them have it now, that church, perhaps it'll make churches rethink this so that it'll be like you say, a cautionary tale that will prevent churches from doing it. And see, I'm also seeing people start to say, this is why churches should stop going live. No, go live. Let us see what's really going on. The answer is not to go live and just bring your toxicity into secret. Mm-hmm. The answer is to reevaluate how you're being the church and to stop being a doggone toxic church. All
right.
Let's just not go live no more. No, full change.
Right. So we can't redo the channels while live, can we? Because we're missing my Facebook page. You've got my YouTube on there, and there's a lot of conversation on my page that I wanted to highlight. You can't add again.
Let's see. We should be on your Facebook page. According to Thing, is streaming on your Facebook page.
It didn't.
And if it's showing on your Facebook page, that means it is streaming to your Facebook page.
I know, but the questions are not coming up in the relay. Restream.
In the chat, yeah. I'm not sure why.
Okay.
You want to read some of the comments? I don't know why, because it is streaming to your page.
Yeah. In fact, let's just move them to the other screen. So one of the comments, I'm not sure where it was. We don't want to stop at Pastor Dion and start back over. Good point, though. So
we're not sure if we even stop it. Is it going to still fix the problem?
Yes. But now, one of the comments that Pastor Dion did say is that people don't want to believe that church hurt is real, and that is true. It still blows my mind. Now, I think there's two parts for that people don't want to believe is real, because a lot of them don't want to accept the fact that they themselves were hurt. And so they was like, well, church hurt is not real. And there are those who have convinced them that church hurt is not real, because you should just toughen it up. I saw something earlier today, like people need to just learn how to laugh it off and move on, or get a thick skin. That's the most ignorant thing.
That's horrible.
It is horrible. But again, it's sometimes it's people who didn't experience it, or there were people who caused it, or it's people who really are delusional to the hurt that they went through, or that's their way of trying to deal with it. One of the other comments was, hey, Chris. One of the other comments was, hold on, I really wanted to read that one. What's wrong? Y'all may have to go over to Pastor Romel's page and comment there so I can see you. But let's see.
Yeah, that way, if you do comment that way, then we can make sure that because my comments are coming through. I don't know why
Yeah.
the ones on Damien's page isn't, but there's a link I just posted to his page, to my page, where you can come over and share your comment if you want it to be seen on the broadcast.
Yeah, it's on several of our pages, Pastor D. So that stop it to the stop it to the churches that are being toxic. Right, exactly.
Say what now?
Stop it to be. She was saying stop it to the churches um, that are being toxic, which is we wish. Um,
Oh, right. Yeah. Pastor Dion was saying that the churches that are being toxic are the ones that need to stop it.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Um,
Gotcha.
so why can't I see the other? Oh wait, is this one of those things where I can?
Well, let me just read some of the comments. So,
Yeah, because I can't see my own
so
stuff.
Angela says, I have never been treated. This is just, oh, this is heartbreaking. I have never been treated just as a man. That's just, oh, think if they judge a woman, judge man too, but they never make them come before the church because at the end of the day, it took two people, a man and a woman. Absolutely. Which lets you know it's not about the sin. It's about the woman, and we like being able to treat women any kind of way. And it's about the sight. I see your sin, or we gonna see your sin when you start showing. And so I don't really give a dang on about whether or not I think your activity was moral or not. Because if that were the issue, the man would be up there too. If I thought it was immoral, it's just the fact of me being able to happen to see this. Keisha said, "Yes, Lord, cussing ministry indeed." I know, girl. See, God help me, but sometimes you got to cuss because language is sometimes inadequate. See, you can be clinical about stuff, but sometimes we need to stop being so clinical in the church and be raw and be real and let the emotional part of what we're saying come across. And sometimes language that people consider to be profane or profanity helps to get that across. And so I don't want people to, how dare you be a pastor and cuss? No, sometimes we need to cuss. They said some things in the Bible that was like, oh, did he really just say that? But that's how we know half of y'all don't actually read the Bible. But they said things in the Bible that have you clutching your pearls too. See, the church is too holy to be effective.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say holy, I don't mean the Bible's version of holy. I mean the church version of
religious.
Holy. Too holy, too religious to be effective, because you won't actually have real conversation and actually show that you care, because you too busy trying to be clinical and trying to keep everything tight. Sometimes you got to just be raw. And I believe that the people who need to hear it the most will respect more of what you have to say if you can just have a real conversation without having to dress every doggone thing up. Somebody ought to cuss on her behalf. Somebody ought to be angry on her behalf.
Right.
So, yeah. So bless you, Keisha.
Yes. So one of the what was it? I think it was Marie. Yeah, Marie said, "Don't touch this table," huh? So that was the other part of the video where I think she like backed up towards the communion table or whatever, and he told her, "Don't touch the table." What?
I didn't even watch the whole
thing. Oh God!
So
you hadn't seen the whole video.
I couldn't watch
it. Oh, it's horrible. And that was the other toxic piece that I meant to mention. Like, right. So it's like she couldn't even touch the table, the communion table standing down front of it. It was just so unchrist-like. This is not Christianity. This is not true Christianity. This is not what Jesus intended in order to ostracize. He welcomed the outsiders, but the people, y'all ostracizing the outsiders and the people inside of the church. Like, I just still don't know how this. And I saw earlier, I think my mommy's still watching. Mommy, I got to tell this. I said it before anyway. Like, the toxic mentality of things in the church. One of them is the women can't enter the pulpit at all, period. The fact in 2025 that that's still a thing is so toxic. So now in order to serve the pastor a glass of water, you got to walk up to the choir loft and lean over the wall to put a glass of water down on the side table for him. when it's Women's Day or there's other women speakers or whatever, of course, that and it's not, and it's a lot of churches like the women can't even get up and say anything other than read the announcements, and sing a part of a, it's not praise teams, it's what you call it, devotion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all women do, and cook in the kitchen, have the babies in wedlock, what have you. But guess what? They'll move past this. She's gonna bring that baby to the church, and if it's a young woman or even a young man, this child is going to be scrutinized by the same way that her mother was in this toxic church environment.
Yeah, and you think, and so you think she did. You went. Your volume went. Did your volume cut? Oh no, you didn't. I thought you were still okay. I'm sorry. I was looking at a different screen where it's still back a few seconds. But so let me not even say that. So Ray commented and said, as a teen who was also a minister of music, I had a pastor tell me not to settle down with one of the young women in the choir, but to give them all hope so that we could keep a big choir. Right? We don't care about the people. We just using you and using your gift and using your big, because it's all about making the church do good and look good. And I'm just so tired of people who are operating in leadership. First of all, stop calling yourself a pastor if you don't know what the hell pastoral ministry is about. See, that's one of the reasons that it irritates me that we treat ministry the way that we treat it in tradition, with people who don't know what ministry is all about. So fivefold: apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher. Most people don't know what the differences between those are. They think a teacher is the person who gets up every Sunday and preaches. They think the pastor is the person who gets up every Sunday and preaches and runs the church organization.
No, go back. The teacher is the Sunday school teacher.
Very true. Very true. And the pastor is the one who preaches every Sunday morning and then runs the church organizationally. The prophet is the one who gets behind the pulpit and says, "Thus saith the Lord."
If you believe in prophecy at all, because a lot of people still think, especially in more mainstream black church and Methodist churches, they believe that the prophets died off back in the biblical times.
Same thing for apostles, right? Are there any apostles at all? And if there are apostles, their only job is to plant churches. You don't have to be a church planting apostle to still have apostolic gift. And so eventually all this stuff. And so I really hate that the leader of a church is called the pastor. I hate that, because that is not biblically what the function of a pastor is. You can have a leader of a church who is an apostle, who is a prophet, who is an evangelist, who is a pastor, or who is a teacher, right? That doesn't mean that every leader of a congregation is a pastor necessarily. A pastor is a person, Jesus taught, God said about giving them pastors after his own heart. A pastor is a person who has a heart for people, compassion, who walks alongside them. A pastor is a shepherd. The shepherd is not shepherding from up in the house. The shepherd is out there in the field with the sheep. He's leading them beside the still waters. He's leading them in the paths, right? He's leading them. He's out there with the sheep, getting dirty with the sheep, going through life, walking alongside the sheep. The pastor is the one who is experiencing life with the congregation. The pastor is the one who is the counselor, the confidant. Yet how many of our pastors have even a semester of any type of counseling, even have a book on their bookshelf about counseling, about providing some type of spiritual care to the people of God? How many pastors have any history, books, formal education at all about life coaching or providing some type of being able to be an encouragement to people, a drive, a cheerleader to help people to thrive and to live their best lives, right? Walking alongside people in their time of suffering and bereavement and challenge. It's not just leading a congregation. And so I'm so tired of churches calling their pastor, their leader, a pastor. And I want y'all to know, I know people say it out of church tradition and out of respect, but if I could just say it publicly, don't call me pastor. That is not my gift. And I am thankful that I am finally able to say that publicly, right? Because there was a long time I couldn't acknowledge that, because I'm like, I was still wrestling with this. I know that's not me, but that's all that we know of for a leader of a congregation. Yet I know I'm called to lead the congregation, so I don't know what else to call myself. But when I was looking at the biblical function of a pastor, I'm like, but that's not really me, right? And so I know I have finally been able to embrace the fact that my gifts, as far as fivefold are concerned, is teacher and apostolic ministry. Pastoral ministry is not my gift. Evangelistic ministry is not my gift. Prophetic ministry is not my gift. And I'm now able to actually say that and own that. But I just want people to stop calling themselves pastor because they lead a congregation when you don't even have a heart for your own self, let alone for anybody else. And so these people who we call pastor, I just that's not what pastoral ministry is. If anything, a real pastor would have walked up and grabbed that microphone before the girl could have got to it and said, no, we're not going to do this today. A real pastor, but while she was walking up there to get the mic, when they called her up there, would have ran up there and grabbed it before she got to it. No, because the real pastor, as a shepherd, defends the sheep against the wolves. I don't care if the wolf is in the pulpit or not, because that's my job as a shepherd, is to defend this flock, to defend those that God has committed to my care and my keeping. So I'm not the one harming the sheep. I'm the one defending the sheep against these wolves that we call bishop and pastor and apostle and prophet and all the other kind of stuff. I'm just so over tradition, the way tradition has organized the church and giving people these titles when it does not in any way describe your ministry, your gift, or your area of special concern. Maybe you have an apostolic ministry that you need to focus on, because pastoring certainly ain't it. That's just my opinion.
And it's not. Listen, that was a whole summer right there. I love it. Teaching, really. And I think that's the other thing too, is that people are afraid because they've been conditioned and brainwashed to believe that they shouldn't question their spiritual leader, or that they shouldn't question the actions of their spiritual leader. And so when, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that every spiritual leader has to go to seminary, but a lot of them either didn't go to seminary, or they just have no real certification training, no biblical study, didn't even take an online course. And it's not that I don't believe that a lot of them weren't called to ministry, but I believe that a lot of so-called what we consider mainstream, a lot of them missed their calling by becoming spiritual leaders, like really over people. This is not your lane. There may be some other things that in ministry you're called to do as a minister, but you're not called to lead over these people, because it's either your nervousness and your fear when in the back of your head, when you really know that you don't know how to do people, you're always angry, upset, and aggressive with people, or either you bleeding all over the people. You have so much going on personally that you can't get a hold of your own stuff for bleeding over the people. And not to say that every spiritual leader has to have it figured out and not have anything major going on, because that's not the case. But really assess. And and especially in the Black community, like if you're called a minister, they instantly think that you're supposed to be a pastor. That's a mistake, y'all. Every minister is not a pastor. And as time goes along, I agree with you. Lynn Baker said that formal training really is needed. It really is needed. It may not always be obtainable, and it may not always be a desire. But I do think that in today's term, in 2025, if you are called to ministry, a lot of times, especially in the Black community, we couldn't afford to go to seminary, or there was no safe place to go to seminary. And so, yeah, I do think it is very much needed. I'm going to be transparent between us. So, like, guess who went kicking and screaming to seminary? The man on the other side of this screen. But what I will say is that in him going, he was already a scholar. He was already a studier of the Bible, a student of the Bible. And that's the part that I appreciated. And his mom tells this story about when he was young. I can't remember, 12, 13, something like that. You could see him at the dining room table after school, at the dining room table with not just the Bible, but with other books to support what it is that he was looking up and researching. And you can't even get these people to do that. You can't get them to look up and just read. When I hear that anybody that's in ministry still believes, even no matter how you feel about homosexuality, if you're still running out here still believing that Sodom and Gomorrah had anything to do with being gay or homosexuality, I don't want to hear nothing you have to say
at all.
You could be right about the next 5 things, but that first thing, I really don't give a damn after that. Excuse me. I really don't care after that because that's basic. It's in the first book of the Bible, and it should have been one of the first things that you test after the whole Adam and Eve situation, especially. But it should be one of the first things that you should test as a Christian. It had nothing to do with that, and that's the whole other thing. We won't go into that. But and if you're one of the people that's looking with a question mark on top of your head, hit us up on the side. But so I don't want to hear anything that you have to say about a woman becoming pregnant in the church, and your thoughts behind it. And then you all are following. I say you all because unfortunately there's somebody on the call now. Now you want to lay this on me, okay? Unfortunately, there's somebody on the live now who's watching. You're in a toxic church. Ladies, you're in a toxic place that doesn't even acknowledge you, or and it's not enough for Mother's Day. It's not okay. It's not enough for just to give you a little spot on Women's Day or whatever. None of those things are enough. And I'm not even venturing into the whole thing of women being called ministry, because that's another conversation that we need to have, and need to have it continuously. But let's just say you aren't even called to ministry, but you do have a word from God. God poured out his spirit on all flesh. You don't have to have a title in order to share a message from the Lord or something.
We'll quote that all the time, but then won't let the women actually use the spirit that he's supposedly poured out.
I do. I have watched women share something with a spiritual leader that God gave them, and watch said spiritual leader get up and preach about it. Like, you took her sermon. Are you for real?
She couldn't give it, apparently.
She couldn't give it, but he could have waited until we got to that day where women are allowed to speak. You could have got to that day and said, I do not understand. Again, I said this earlier. You all make every church. Y'all make up every church. I don't feel like there's any denomination, especially under Christianity, that women don't make up 70+% of the church. And so the fact that you all tolerate the things that you're tolerating, and stop trying to drag me back to the Bible about how, because if that's the case, then let's go back to slavery. We ain't going back, but you can't stop cherry picking how women should be treated. And it breaks my heart to watch a woman justify misogyny and patriarchy. That breaks me. Oh, that breaks me. So
because they've been conditioned to believe it.
Yes, it is. It's an internal. You talk about internalized homophobia. This is internalized misogyny and patriarchy. And women are just as bad, and some very dogmatic. But I realize that now I'm messing with your safety zone. I'm messing with what you know, and you don't know how to exist outside of that. Because not only do you have to change if you're married, now you got to get the mentality of your husband to change as well. And it doesn't mean that God is any less for you. It doesn't mean that you're any less dedicated to the church. To simply want to be respected and received as an individual. Take away gender. As an individual, I honestly, my prayer is that the young lady who got married, who got pregnant out of wedlock, who couldn't touch the communion table while she was up, quote unquote, repenting. First of all, y'all don't know what repent is. Repent is not about me apologizing or asking God to forgive me. Repent is about a state of mind of change. And guess what? Her mind was not changed. She was embarrassed. She was hurt. She was a whole lot of things. So repent that's another thing behind Sodom and Gomorrah. Y'all don't know what repent is. Repent is not about me apologizing or asking God or saying to God, I'm sorry. That's not what.
And shame is not a fruit of the spirit. So this idea that somehow we're doing the work of God by shaming people is absolutely anti-Christ. It's not who he was. If anything, Jesus spared people. He saved people he saved, let's talk women specifically. He saved women from the mob. And here's the
Right.
problem. I guarantee you there were women in that mob too that
Absolutely.
had stones in their hand about to strike that woman down. But guess
Absolutely.
what? Jesus saved the woman from a mob of men and women. And so,
Mhm.
why can't we be people who save people from religious mobs rather than people who participate in the mob because our stuff wasn't found out? Just because she had to carry her baby bump doesn't mean that your stuff we don't know about or that it don't exist. And so, what I fear for people is that Jesus talked about judge not lest ye be judged. He talked about the same measure that you judge, it shall be meted back to you. I think that what's going to wind up happening is the people who are trying to shame other people, your stuff it's gonna come around. You reap what you sow. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. And so you're gonna want grace when your stuff come around, right? But yet here in this situation, because of this woman who clearly has no power in the church, right? And so she's a marginalized. She's on the margins of the church. She's a weak woman in terms of not having authority in her church, and so she's an easy target. But we're gonna find out what happens when your stuff come to light, Bishop.
Right.
When your stuff come to light, Pastor, Reverend, Doctor.
And why is it that in these apostolic Pentecostal backwoods churches, and I'm gonna say backwood, I don't care whether you apostolic Pentecostal in New York, your mentality is backwood. I'm just gonna say what I'm gonna say at this point. But your mentality is backwood. But where are the other sins? Why is a woman being pregnant out of wedlock the one that y'all put on display? What about the rest that y'all do find out? But it's the whole ignorant vision of it. It's because we can physically see, we know you're not married, and we physically can see that you're pregnant. So you physically see the bumps and bruises and black eyes on another woman in the church, and y'all know that her husband is beating the hell out of her at home, but y'all don't bring him to the forefront to call him out.
Mm-hmm. Or
Help
bring
me
him to the
understand.
forefront to beat the hell out of him. How about that part? And
Exactly. Y'all
listen,
want to stone somebody.
and then they deny her a baby shower, which lets you know again you don't care about her or this baby.
Nope.
And probably most of them probably voted for Trump because they've been conditioned to want to be pro-life because they use the pro-life issue as a form of manipulating people's support. And so they pro-life but don't care about the baby.
He is
Pro-life,
determined to
but
keep her
all
pregnant.
you care about is her being pregnant. But when as soon as the pregnancy happens, then as soon as the birth happens, you disappear, and so you don't
Right.
even want to support this baby. I don't care what the circumstances were; the baby's not a
Right.
sin. And so now you deny her the ability to have a baby shower. Well, we can't celebrate sin. A baby shower is not celebrating sin. When have you went to a baby shower of a married woman and somebody was like, "Yeah, we in here to celebrate. Y'all had sex." Well, it wasn't a sin. Yeah, but a baby shower is not to celebrate sex in marriage or out of marriage. It's about
Right.
helping to support the parents in providing resources for the raising of this child. And so they let you know right there, they don't care about this woman. They don't care about
No.
that baby. All they
No.
care about is their judgmental ass doctrine.
I was going to
And
say
excuse
upholding
me
church
for cussing
doctrine.
again, but I'm just saying,
Is,
all you care
is,
about is doctrine and looking good and having somebody to beat up on.
and I was going to say all it is about upholding a church doctrine that was man-made, not biblically based at all. And that's the other thing. Like you can't put since for all the Bible thumpers, you can't even point out where in the Bible where this is justified biblically. It's not. It is not. It is a toxic religious culture
It's
that
a
has
stoning
it,
without a physical rock. It's just a stoning.
it's a stoning. And so yes, like where are these people going to be? So if not a baby shower in order to garner things, because I'm not in this young woman's finances or anything like that. And I really hate it because now what and I'm not saying she's not smart, but a smart thing what to do over the last 2 days is thousands of people were trying to send her a cash app. Like they almost broke the girl cash app. And from what I understand, the cash apps were being returned. If old girl really wasn't brainwashed like she was in this situation, She could have took the coin, moved her and her baby. But I realized, that's an extreme thing. But there was a window out. Do you know how many young girls who could have taken that and really moved to a better life for her and her baby? Like that really could happen. I hate that she couldn't do it. And that's why I say the same thing for those of us who have choices, who can do better about what kind of church we belong to. You have the choice. Listen, I'm not even, as much as I'm sitting here wearing this, and I still and will forever stand the sanctuary. I'm not trying to talk you into just coming to the sanctuary wherever you are, and if you are here in St. Louis, if you belong to a religious organization, I don't care, church ministry, even a music ministry that has toxic behavior and support something like this, run away. Don't spend. You just got into 2025. We're on the sixth day of 2025. It's still not too late for you to change the church. I'm not telling you not to go to church. I would that you go to a virtual church and attend somewhere else that isn't going to keep feeding into this toxic behavior. And we're going to keep calling it out. Nobody's taking it anymore. Women are not going to continue to be subjected to misogyny and patriarchy. And overseer says this all the time. It's really not women's responsibility to fix it. But ladies, you all have to stop standing for it. It's up to men to fix it. And no matter and men, is no matter your orientation, no matter whether you gay, straight, bi, or whatever, it's up to us to fix it. But ladies, you have to call it out. You have to and you have to recognize it yourself. You can't be 80 years old and don't realize this was some wrong stuff. This was real messed up. Yeah, grandma, it was messed up. We need to.
And you dealt with it. You tolerated it. But okay,
yeah.
Fine. But love your child. Love your grandchild enough to not continue building these churches that are harming them.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm like a man who, all the misogyny, all the hyper masculinity that we see in the church. Even to the extent of toxic masculinity that we see in the church about men being men and men being aggressive and men being a protector. Well, then, damn it, stand up and protect. Where was her daddy? Right? Did you stand up and protect your daughter? Or even not if it's her physical child. This man, period, since you seem to be the one who's supposed to be the protector of the woman because she's so fragile that can't do anything for herself. All these men in the church, nobody protected her from this. No. Where were y'all sit? Where were y'all when she was being shamed and harmed? Because you don't see it as a form of harm, because we've been conditioned to accept spiritual and religious harm as normative and acceptable. But yet you're supposed to be a protector. Where is your masculinity when a woman actually needs it? She don't need your toxic masculinity when you say your body, my choice. She don't need your toxic masculinity when you go in the voting booth trying to take away her right to an abortion. What she needs your masculinity is to stand up behind that, to stand up in the church and defend her against this misogynistic power structure. Where's your manhood then? Where are your big balls then, dude? I get tired of men claiming to be men and yet don't stand up when they need it the most. They stand up when it's easy. They stand up when it's consistent with the paradigm that empowers them. But you won't stand up and use your power and your privilege. And I say the same thing to white people. I believe very strongly about holding people accountable in all areas of marginalization. So I come for men about misogyny. I come for white people about racism. I come for straight people about homophobia. I come for cis people about transphobia. We got to do better. It's not okay to use our privilege only when it's in a way that bolsters our privilege. We need to be using our privilege to tear down the very systems that have privileged us in the first place. So yes, women, mob up and leave these churches. But how about some of you men grow some and leave them too? You should be leaving them too. Where are the women's allies? And why are y'all still present in these spaces? There were men there who probably disagreed with what happened, but nobody said anything. Maybe you didn't want to interrupt the service. God's not the author of confusion. Okay, fine. Say something afterwards. Have you said something yet? And it's been 24 hours? Probably not. And you probably won't. And it bothers me that people, when it comes to like sexuality or homophobia or not sexuality or misogyny, we'll have these conversations at in our homes around the dinner table, but we won't have them where they're needed the most. And so it's like, so you stand up and talk about how bad it is, but yet you're right there and you're letting it happen. I don't need a silent ally. I don't need a closeted ally. What I need is somebody who actually cares enough about me to put their own self at risk, their own position at risk, their own title at risk in order to stand up for something and actually believe in something strong enough to actually take a stand, to actually have a position. Well, that's his house. And somebody said that earlier today. Well, his house, his rules. First of all, it's God's house. Second, and it's God's rules. Second of all, so I asked the question. I said, so if he took a switch and commenced to beating her in front of the church, is it still his house, his rules? We just think that anything can go on because if she didn't like it, she could leave the church. Y'all don't understand this whole idea of what is it called? I forget what they call it. The syndrome where you begin to empathize, if you will, with your captor, with your oppressor, right? We see a lot of time with pick-me's in like the Black community in terms of race, but it happens in this situation too. And so you don't understand what it's like to be a marginalized, oppressed person, where sometimes you actually become a defender of the ones who are oppressing you. And so somebody needs to be able to stand up, even if the person being oppressed is not opposing their oppression. We still know just in principle it's still wrong, and somebody needs to say something about it. We need to be able to actually stand for something. And unfortunately, a lot of us don't stand for anything unless it's consistent with the majority. If it's not, if it's going against the majority, we don't say anything because we care more about our position than we do about standing up for what's right. Which, by the way, is a reason that a lot of affirming pastors are still pastoring non-affirming churches. How you believe in your own heart that God affirms people, but yet you won't preach it or teach it or advocate for it. You're a closeted affirmer. You're not a closeted ally. You're not an ally at all.
At all. Yeah, and I hate that because and honestly, I could probably name 5 off the bat, and it's like I appreciate you in your support of me individually. So like I get a lot of, especially back home from where I'm from, some in ministry, some not, will inbox me.
Stockholm. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but Stockholm syndrome, that's what it's called. Thank you.
I was gonna Google it. I was like, I know what he's talking about. But what I can't do, what bothers me is you'll inbox the individual in support of them, but you won't say anything to us out front of everybody else. Like if I make a post or whatever, like when we had Cameron and for us, when we got Cam or whatever, oh, that's so amazing. People were making all these comments on the post. And then I had like 4 or 5 individuals who sent me an inbox message to congratulate me, but wouldn't even like the pictures of the baby or whatever. Like, so you can't even like, it's a kid. It's a newborn. You can't even like a picture in support of a child because I'm the gay boy, I'm married to a man, whatever. So in this case too, there are those who will sit on a pew. And like you said, there's some people that sat at her church and knew, and I believe that I want to believe that there are some younger men in the church who were very uncomfortable with that, not because it's a woman thing, but because they knew that it was wrong. I really want to believe that. I want to go through and read some of the comments because I can tell, like my friend, hey friend, is on fire. But some of the comments that she made, like she just watched the video. She said, what you're not going to do is tell me I can't have a shower for my baby or my grandbaby. Absolutely.
Who is your friend? You ain't talking about who your friend is.
I'm sorry. Minister Lady Lee out of Kansas City, Missouri, with Whosoever Community of Faith. Hi, friend. But I can understand it. Like, you're not going to tell me what to do at my house. And let's be honest, they're going to do, and while we're talking about behind the scenes thing, there's some women in the church who are subjected to it themselves, or either they've seen it before. They're going to sly away, get something for the mother to support because they have to mentally and emotionally put themselves in that position. You couldn't be a woman with a womb, or even if you don't have a womb, you couldn't be a woman and not feel some level of sympathy and empathy for that young lady. So you're not gonna tell me that they ain't gonna slide away, send her some money, drop a gift off on the sly,
So
and
you
they
will
should
give her a private gift or private party, but you still go to the church.
still
I'm
go and
sorry.
support the church. And my thing of it is, if I could talk to all the women in church, I don't care how long you've been here at the church. They just look like they just no, that was New Year's. I think, and they also supported the pastor's anniversary or whatever. Yeah, I went all through their Facebook page, but had to get my little research in.
Inspect the gadget.
But yeah, you know. Um, but I had to do all my little research. But I went through there and I was like, if the women just got up and protested, if they just went and had service of their own at somebody's house, that church would shut down.
It
Do
would.
you hear
It
me?
really would. It really would.
Screw the deacon boards, pardon me. Forget the deacon board and the pastor. You, who, if y'all just band together to support each other, like use this as a catalyst. Since now your church has gone viral across the world, use this as an opportunity. I wish that I know they're not, but I wish that they would get together and say that. I still want to read some of the others because mine are still not populating up on our restream here. So when we were talking about leaving the church, somebody said run fast. Let's see. Let me see. Okay, so Robert, just a few minutes ago, Robert Harvey said, Alice Walker challenges us to align to womanism, and it means we must sacrifice our proximities to power by sustaining it. Let's see.
Before you go on to another comment, let me just say something about that.
Yeah.
Now, notice that he said womanism and not feminism. Why does womanism exist? Womanism exists because feminism, which should have covered everything, was dealing with women's rights, but it was only doing it through the lens of whiteness. Mm-hmm. And so it recognized the injustice, but it only recognized the injustice through their own lived experience and didn't care to give space for to platform the injustice of other lived experiences of other women. And so there had to be a whole different movement for Black women and women of color, Black women in particular, to deal with issues of misogyny and patriarchy, because even amongst women, there was not a space to deal with the intersectionality between misogyny and race. And this is why it's so important that we understand that as a person in a marginalized community, whether you're LGBTQ, whether you're, let me rephrase that, because there's problems even with the LGB and then the T having issues with each other, right? So whether you're LGB, I couldn't even say B because there are people who don't even believe the B exists. So whether you are LG, whether you are B, whether you are T, there still has to be a recognition that there are other forms of oppression too. Just because it's not your story doesn't mean that it's the only story, that it doesn't matter. Right? Why are Black people homophobic? Why are women racist? Why, you know what I'm saying? And so we have to be able to understand and use our own experience of oppression as a way of standing in solidarity with other forms of oppression too. There should not have to have been a need for a womanist movement, because there should have been an acknowledgement amongst white women that the Black female experience also has its own particularity and have been given space for that. We see the same thing in the LGBT community. I mentioned earlier about how LGs don't even, some of them don't even believe that bisexuality exists. And then there are people in the LGBT community who have issues with trans people. And so it's like, where are we not getting this? And why in so many pride exhibitions, why does it have to be a Black pride? Why does it have to be a Latino pride? Why does it have to be an Asian or Asian American pride? Why does it have to be so many different prides segmented by race? Because we miss it. The main pride, the mainstream pride, usually doesn't platform, at least not to a significant enough degree, people of color and their particular lived experiences. And so there has to be all these different prides that actually hold up and honor the lived experience of people who happen to, yes, be LGBTQ plus, but also Black, but also, but also Latino. And so it's a shame that we can be a part ourselves of a marginalized community without understanding the intersectionality and honoring and respecting that lived experience of people, other people who don't look like us, even though they're a part of our same marginalized community. We just it's sad because it's like we want so much to have a better experience. We want so much, thank you. We want so much to have a better experience for ourselves, but yet we don't want to try to build a better experience for other people, even if they're a part of our same community, like women. Y'all all women, but you're only going to seek the white female advancement. You're all LGBTQ, but you're not going to stand for trans people. It's just sad that our own marginalization hasn't made us empathetic to the lived experience of other groups of people. That's really tragic.
Okay, camera settled down now, y'all. It was bottle time. It actually was past bottle time, and he was telling us this, but but that is a multitasking. And yes, I think, which is why for me, the tail end of what you just said, which is why to me that, ladies, it's important for you. It's up to men to correct patriarchy and misogyny, but it is up to you all to continue to call it out, to continue to bring recognition to it. So that, because let's just be honest, even those of us who are gay and might be a little bit more enlightened and what have you in some areas, there are still some things that just biological, like as men, just like there's whiteness, there's maleness. And there's some things that we're not always tuned into because this is how we were brought up. So I'm saying to you, like for me, as a man, as a male, point out some stuff to me and say, well, now let me and back up. Do not, now those of you who got this problem with us holding the door open for you and all that kind of stuff, girl, that's not about a male or female thing. I'm just trying to be kind and nice to you. Your ass can open the door for me next. Now save all of that. We're talking about sensible things here that are on topic. Stay on topic, okay? But it's up to you all because it's gonna happen. I'm like, no, honey, y'all going a little bit too further over. Believe me, you can hold it open for me all day long if you want to, but just out of normal. But I mean, that was a very small example. But I'm just saying, like, out of maleness, there are some things that we may not recognize, and it is up to you to point out that, hey, here's one of those moments. And personally, I want to hear them so that I can still, correct and move forward. And just like in anything, you still have to give time and space for it. Now, if I keep repeating a behavior and you done told me 5 times, that's another question. That means that he just don't want to change or stop. But give people some time and space for other. Let me read some more of the comments. And I know we might be going back on some of these. Let's see. Crystal Wilson said a few minutes ago, I need to accomplish who is willing to use their privilege to stand up for my rights in spaces where I am not present. That's allyship. Right. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And let's see. Yeah, I think this was from Minister Lady Lee. She said that they're scared to teach it because they'll lose their position. I do think that is the case in a lot of cases, their position, and in some places they may be sat down in their own church that they preach at or lead or what have you. But this is how I feel like in some of those cases, gosh, I can't believe one of my brothers, Marcus, is basically a virtual member of the church in Chicago. What's his name? Reginald something. What is the church? Y'all know who I'm talking about. He's very good, very dynamic. I really like him. He reads his church for filth in the most Christian-like way when it comes to homosexuality. uh, and you can tell, like, I think they just celebrated like his 11th anniversary or something. It's something recently that that uh oh gosh. Anyway, my point is that we do have some allies. There's another gentleman I just started following him. I can't believe I can't remember their names. Since I saw them right away, I would know. But I do feel like that some of the churches really are trying to make a turn in that they are uplifting women and calling out those church members and pointing out that. And then now some of them still have the teaching that homosexuality is a sin, but they are talking about how people treat the LGBT community, how women are treated. They don't take away, they're not taking away from the fact that they feel like the man should be the head of the household and the last word and all that kind of stuff. I'm kind of like baby steps, y'all. So give the people some baby
You can
steps.
be wrong, but still wrong. You can be wrong in the right spirit.
Yeah.
Even if you're still wrong, but at least I can respect the fact that your approach is honorable.
Yes, and I think that's the thing too with me is that, like what I said earlier, like I'm really not here trying to change your beliefs. I'm really not, like your core beliefs. I'm not trying to change that, but how we treat people is really where I'm at. Like I'm not out here trying to beat people over the head. I'm not out here. I'm not out here having biblical arguments about scripture and what have you. Now, you can't tell me nothing that I ain't already seen, researched, and learned on or been taught myself to a degree. But I'm also willing to hear someone when we come to the table and have a discussion about misogyny and patriarchy. That's one thing. But you coming to browbeat me with an already made up mind. I ain't trying to hear nothing you got to say. And that's a lot of what a lot of us have to stand up and do in these churches is say, I'm not going to keep subjecting myself, let alone those who come along behind me. I'm just not going to keep, we're just not going to keep doing this circle. And we have to break the circle and the cycle because where do we stop? Where do we get off the merry-go-round? I was glad that I got off the merry-go-round, and it's no shade or anything to my two previous churches from back home. I got so much from both. I really did. I really got so much from both. But then there's so many other things that I realized either while I was there or if I really looked back and thought on it some years later, that really was not okay. But I also realized that it was the culture of the church. And guess what? Some things have changed since I've been gone. But yes, you don't get to change mine either. And that's my thing is that we can agree to disagree and still respect each other. I'm just where the level of respect and you not getting in the way of any said individual living their life for themselves. If people really left things to God like they, especially Christians, if Christians really left the things to God like they claim they do, you're interfering with my life at the voting poll or any woman's life at the voting poll wouldn't even be necessary. Or just walking down the street every day and you just gonna trip me up because you feel like you don't like, you realize that you had you had a baby out of wedlock, or I realize that you're a gay person, or I realize that you're this political affiliation or not. If you trip me up because you don't like it, you're interfering with my space, yet you can't scream at the same time, rights and privileges and things like that for yourself, and then try to hold those up for somebody else. And I feel like this is one of those things that this young lady had a very personal experience in her life. And the pastor, this church, and so many others, because I'm as much backlash, as much anti ism to this there is, that there's some people behind the scenes who have supported this man and supported their church and what just happened with this young lady. They sent donations to the church. Now the church is in this week of prayer or whatever it is, and they were on day 2. And the first thing that they put up there was welcome to the week of, blah, blah, blah. Here's our cash app for any donations or whatever. And of course, a bunch of people made comments under there. I don't, where is, they call the young lady's name? I can't remember. Where is her cash app? Because we want to support her. We're not supporting y'all. But you know that there are people that did. So you know that there are some people that sent some donations to the church because they stand up and believe for that the church was in its right to do so. And I think the pastor didn't help the situation when it came to that communion table. Like that was to me, that was the thing that really sealed the deal about how toxic he is and this church when that communion. And I believe that happened for a reason.
I didn't even know that happened. I hadn't even heard that.
Yeah.
And the scripture says that God hates people who say, don't come near me, for I am holier than you. That's where that whole phrase, holier than thou, comes from. God said those people are a stench to my nostrils. He hates that. And yet you're going to act like this table? And I hear Jesus saying, do you think God cares more about this table than about the people that it's supposed to serve? Just like people say that man was made. He said man was not made for the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for man. And yet you care more about the Sabbath than you care about the people it was intended to serve in the first place.
Right.
It's like, how did we get so lost in the church? How did this happen? We let it happen. Part of it because we would not hold the church accountable. So having conversations like this is necessary. Putting people on blast is necessary. We got to do it. We got to do it in order to hold us accountable, because turning a blind eye is so. Christian A. Smith, some of y'all may have heard of him. He wrote, and he said, to anyone publicly defending this, you are the reason the church is in decline. Your behavior is quickly ushering the church to its demise. If we don't speak up and speak out about it, then we become what's the word? Anyway, it becomes our shame as well and not just theirs. We have got to speak up about it. We have got to speak out about it. And so the conversations are necessary, even though we are frustrated by the fact that we have to have them. Anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up?
No, we're an hour and a half. Okay. No, I'm really and truly, like, I am curious to see how this is all. I mean, it'll probably just die down and go away, and then we'll be on to the next viral thing anyway. But I am glad. I'm sorry. I'm not, I have some friends of mine who are, I love y'all, but y'all too churchy for your own good. Like, you're not, you just, I love you, but you're churchy. You're not, let me not question your spiritual levels, but I feel like there's a growth for all of us. There's more growth for all of us spiritually and really what Christianity looks like. But you can't be such a slave. You can't be such a slave to the church and religion and not really be the Christian that you claim to be. So you can't be more concerned about, the image of the church, and they're really going to go through so much, blah, blah, blah. But you ain't said nothing about the young lady. You're concerned about the likes and loves of the church. The church is going to be fine because those people that are part of their congregation, they're really not going to go anywhere. They already, most of this type of church already that has the mentality of it's us against the world. So, they stick together. Now, what I'll give them is they're going to stick together like glue, like that whole, some of us, we have some moments of like, we ain't seen you in 9 months. We didn't even know you were still a member. I didn't know you were still alive. But this type of church, you have to give them the credit for the tenacity of the membership. That you have to give them the tenacity for. But that church is going to be fine. So let's not be so sensitive about the church itself and not be sensitive, because the hurt is the young woman. The church is going to be fine as a whole. They're going to unfortunately, the pastor going to still keep pastoring in their way and what they consider pastor looks like, bishop, whatever he was. So if they, oh God, that's a whole other thing. Like, if you're a bishop, what other churches are you over that you are pushing this narrative to as well? Like, it's crazy to me. But I will say this. We know, many of us know several other situations throughout the country that are similar to this. And it is up to us to have these conversations, all those things out. and at the same time still be able to maintain God and where we are. Cameron is telling us that it's time to wrap this up. But these types of conversations, have these. Don't let this go. Further this conversation with your friends and your loved ones, because you got somebody in your family that they feel like either it happened to them and they feel like it's just how it goes, or they have a mentality that it was okay, and it's not.
And it's not. Absolutely. All right, y'all. Listen, I am back tomorrow evening for another response video to the conversation that months ago. This will probably be the last one I deal with that. It's not Harley initiated themselves, but it's just a response video that somebody else did, and I wanted to be able to respond to some of the points that they were making. And so that'll be airing tomorrow night at 8 o'clock p.m. I hope that y'all join me for that. And then we're continuing with our interview format the following week. So so please help me to share, get the word out. If you have not subscribed, don't just like the page on Facebook, which is at facebook.com/Faith Evolution and the number 7. But also please go over to YouTube and subscribe to the channel. YouTube.com/Faith Evolution and the number 7. YouTube.com/Faith Evolution 7. And my personal YouTube account, which was showing this a moment ago, YouTube.com/R Parks-Weekly. I'm challenging the church. I'm pushing us. I'm challenging us to try to do better. I need your support to help get that word out. Thank you all so much for joining us for this conversation tonight. We look forward to continuing the conversation in the coming months and in the coming weeks with your support and with your love. God bless you all so much. Good night.
Good night.